This is a clip from Basketball at the Bar Live. All right, let's talk about the Orlando Magic. They finished last season with the worst record in the Eastern Conference at 22-60. They have a lot of work to do. They lucked out in the NBA draft lottery, and they officially have the number one overall pick in this year's NBA draft. Calvin, let's talk about an Orlando Magic rebuild. But before we can do that, I want to just touch on the depth chart, where they're looking at salary cap wise, and then we can both kind of make some recommendations as far as where they go from here. Point guards, Cole Anthony, drafted just last year, has played incredibly well. He has solidified himself as the starting point guard for now on the Orlando Magic. And the guy that they traded for just a couple years ago in Markelle Fultz is now backing him up. Number one overall pick for the Philadelphia 76ers, forgot how to shoot, had an injured shoulder, ended up getting picked up by Orlando for a late first-round pick. I'd say it was a good deal for both teams, but he is currently the second-string point guard for this Orlando team. Shooting guard, Jalen Suggs, a young guy with a ton of potential, early first-round draft pick. And R.J. Hampton is the second-string shooting guard, according to ESPN's depth chart. We have Franz Wagner starting at small forward, first round draft pick just this last year, has played incredibly well. Great defender, great shooter. Terrence Ross is backing him up. Then we have Jonathan Isaac filling in the power forward position. Now this dude has not played since 2020, since tearing an ACL. In March, he also injured his hamstring, rehabbing that ACL.
I think it was an Achilles injury for him.
I think it was both. I think it was Achilles and then both? ACL.
God, it's amazing how often these guys get both of those now.
Yeah, so he hasn't played since August of 2020, and he is officially slated as the starting power forward on this team next season.
He's also their highest paid player currently for next season.
Then you have Wendell Carter Jr. starting at center. He was picked up from the Bulls for Nikola Vucevic, also a first-round pick pretty recently. And Mo Bamba is filling in that backup center position, also a first-round pick by the Orlando Magic. Just to jump here into salary cap information, Gary Harris is an expiring $20 million deal, expiring at the end of this season, which is about a week away from now. Jonathan Isaac, as you mentioned, is signed for 3 more seasons, 17.4 each season, and these are all partially guaranteed contracts, probably due to incentives, games played, injuries, stuff like this. Mm-hmm. When you have a guy dealing with knee injuries, Achilles injuries, stuff like that, you re-sign him to a deal because he's only 24, but you put some provisions in there to protect yourself, and that's exactly what they did with him. Markelle Fultz, very similar situation, 24 years old. He's locked in for $16.5 million next season and a partially guaranteed $17 million for the season after that. Terrence Ross is in the last year of his contract, $11.5 million for next season. Mo Bamba is a restricted free agent. We'll see what happens with him this offseason. Wendell Carter was just signed to a new 4-year deal, $14 million next season, and he has 3 years after that. Jalen Suggs starts year 2 of his rookie deal at $6.9 million. Franz Wagner also starts year 2 of his rookie deal at $5.2 million. Robin Lopez is a $5 million expiring contract at the end of this season. Cole Anthony, R.J. Hampton, both enter year 3 of their rookie deals. Bol is officially off the books here. And Mo Wagner has a partially guaranteed $1.8 million contract for next season. I mentioned they also have the first pick in this year's NBA draft. So, Calvin, I want to hear from you. What are the most important things to be handled this offseason? Do you like this team? Do you like the direction they're going? And what other kind of insights or tips do you have to help them get back to the NBA playoffs?
Wow, man, they've definitely got some work to do before they get back to the playoffs, right? I mean, this roster is kind of all over the place right now. It's a little bit bare bones. You know, when you talk about teams rebuilding, obviously there's basically only a few different ways you can go about doing that, right? You can rebuild through the draft. You can retool through free agency, or you can try to throw together a huge trade that nabs you a win-now player. if I think about what makes the most sense or what is most realistic for the Magic, it's rebuilding through the draft. They've kind of already started that process. Their 2 draft picks last year, they've got to be feeling very, very good about. Franz Wagner was, probably the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year the first half of the season. Injuries kind of derailed the end of his year, but he far exceeded my expectations for what his rookie season was going to look like. Jalen Suggs the same way. A lot of injuries, didn't play a ton of games, but like you mentioned, lots of potential. They definitely need to figure out what's going on with their backcourt, because they have 3 guys in Fultz, Anthony, and Suggs who are all combo guards. None of them I would really say are true point guards or true shooting guards. So what is the combination? Who do you start in that backcourt, or do you decide to move on from one of those guys and let Jalen Suggs be the man? They definitely need to add depth at the front, on the front court position. And luckily for them, the first overall pick could nab them one of the 2 best players in this draft, who are legit starting power forwards, we believe, in the NBA. So when I think about, can they make a trade to try to improve quicker than that? What are their real best trade assets? They don't have many right now. Jonathan Isaac's their highest paid player, but like you said, he hasn't played in a couple of seasons. Markelle Fultz, I don't think anybody is willing to trade for him at this point. So you basically have the number 1 overall pick to use, which is probably their best asset, or one of these young guys that just finished their rookie season. I don't believe they want to trade Suggs or Wagner at this moment. So you take this number 1 pick, you use it on Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren, whichever you feel is the better fit for the team. And then you continue to retool that way through the draft. They've got a lot of young guys here that have a lot of potential. It's not going to be a quick rebuild, I think, for this team. But on the other side of that, that allows you to take a little bit of a risk here in terms of Jonathan Isaac and Fultz. These guys are it's undetermined what they're going to look like at this point. However, if they return to, reasonable form, especially Isaac, and you give the qualifying offer on Mo Bamba, you've got a really big, long, very good defensive potential team. Jalen Suggs is an excellent defender in his own right. Everybody raves about Jonathan Isaac's wingspan and his ability to cover ground. He's the prototypical 2-way forward that the league wants right now. Then you add a guy like Jabari Smith or Chet Holmgren, who also have really high defensive potential, and Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. back there anchoring the defense. That's a good start. As I said, it's going to be a slow rebuild, but I don't see a ton of other options for this Magic team right now.
Yeah, I just want to start out here by saying I love what this Magic team is doing. I think they've drafted extremely well recently. They have over $40 million in cap space this offseason. There's not really any bad contracts on this team. I mean, you would say maybe Jonathan Isaac is a bad contract if he doesn't return to the court, but the fact that it is partially guaranteed and they can void the contract if they like is very interesting. For me, the number 1 key to this Magic team is going to be patience. You have a lot of young guys. Yeah. I think the oldest guy under contract for next season is Terrence Ross at 31. Other than that, you have 3 different guys that are 24, some guys that are 20, 22, 21, 23, a ton of young guys on this team. And the fact that you won the draft lottery and have the number 1 overall pick here goes right along the lines that you were saying, is in they're best off rebuilding through the draft, and they've already started that process. I like Markelle Fultz. Unfortunately, he has not, exceeded expectations for being the number 1 overall pick, which is very hard. But he is only 24 years old. He was an incredible college player, and I think he will have an impact in the NBA. I just don't know what that is at this point. I like Jonathan Isaac a lot. As you mentioned, very lengthy. He can score from many different positions. He just needs to get healthy, which is also kind of in my patience that I was mentioning. Wendell Carter Jr. is only 23 years old. He's locked up on a very reasonable contract. Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, both guys drafted last season that have played well. Cole Anthony, drafted the season before that, has also played well. I love this team's roster as far as youth. I love looking at their books here and not seeing any like overpaid huge contracts that are holding this team back. It's just patience for me. I think you draft either Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith, whoever you feel will fit in well at the 4 position. And I think you got to bring back Mo Bamba. He's also only 24 years old. I think you can get him on a relatively reasonable contract. You're going to have a ton of young guys on this team. You need them all to just be fighting for positions, let the cream rise to the top, see who you're going to have. And then I think you spend a lot of this offseason money bringing in veterans. I like to think of this team similar to an earlier version of the Phoenix Suns before they brought in Chris Paul, a team with a lot of young guys, a lot of talent, but they haven't really proven or done anything. Not that Chris Paul's available, but maybe you bring in a Rajon Rondo, a Ricky Rubio, some of these older guys that can help mentor these players while not stealing their starting position. So I really like this Orlando Magic team. I think they have a lot of potential. It's just going to take some patience from the front office, from the fans, and from the players to watch these younger guys develop and establish themselves, build a culture, build an identity, and build some chemistry. But I think this will be an amazing team in 3 years from now.
Wow, that's a bold prediction there.
Yeah.
But you could be very right, especially if, Suggs and Wagner continue to improve and become, legit players, first-round talents that they've shown promise for. And another thing I like about this team is if you get Fultz and Isaac back healthy, all of a sudden you've got a pretty deep team.
Yeah.
Like, this is a team that's probably 11 to 12 guys deep. When you mention people like Terrence Ross, Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, that bench gets a lot stronger with bringing these guys back healthy.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm looking at is 2024 and 2025 because we've all played NBA 2K where we've traded every single player and started out with a bunch of draft picks and drafted guys, and it's great. But if guys overexceed or if they do exceptionally well, which you want them to do, you need to pay them. So for me, I'm looking at 2024, 2025. You're going to have to pay guys like Cole Anthony, potentially RJ Hampton, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, and maybe even a Markelle Fultz and a Jonathan Isaac if they end up playing much better. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they are able to kind of work out all these contracts. You're obviously not going to keep all these players, but hopefully by 2024, 2025, you will know who your starters are and who you're building around. It's the beauty of having all this young talent is basically you can throw them all out there, let them fight for their position, for their spot. So exciting team. I think they're not going to make the playoffs next season. However, I have a lot of high hopes for this team, and I think they will be something to reckon with in a few years with some patience, with a little bit of luck as far as injuries go, and just a lot of hard work from these players and from the coaching staff on this team. If you're a Magic fan, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Calvin and I will be here all offseason breaking down the Orlando Magic and a bunch of these other teams in the NBA. So we would appreciate if you guys subscribe to the channel. Calvin, any last thoughts on the Orlando Magic before we move on here?
June 23rd is a big, big day for them.
It is.
Very big day.
Are you keeping the pick?
Yeah, I'm keeping the pick.
I'm definitely keeping the pick. I don't think you should trade a number 1 overall pick unless it's just a complete garbage draft, which I don't think this is. But that's what you draft for, right? Is everyone wants the number 1 pick. They want the ability to choose from the litter, basically any guy that you want. And they have that. So
yeah,
congratulations to them. It's going to be an exciting season for the Orlando Magic next year. Milwaukee Bucks lose to the Boston Celtics in 7 games. Their second best player, Chris Middleton, has been injured pretty much the entire postseason. He's making $37.9 million next season, and he's got a player option for $40 million the season after that. Let's jump here into the numbers with the Milwaukee Bucks and try and figure out what they can do to improve and get back to the NBA Finals and win another championship. So I mentioned Chris Middleton is under contract for 2 more seasons. Giannis is under contract for 4 more seasons, 42.4, 45.6, 48.7, and a huge player option in 2025, 2026 of $51.9 million. Drew Holiday's under contract for 3 more seasons, 32.3, 34.6, and a player option at 36.9. Brook Lopez is entering in the final year of his deal. It is an expiring $13.9 million contract. Serge Ibaka is officially off the books, as well as Wesley Matthews. We have Pat Connaughton returning if he chooses to, player option for $5.7 million. Bobby Portis, $4.5 million player option. Grayson Allen is under contract for 2 more seasons, one at 9.6 and one at 10.3. George Hill is under contract for 1 more year at $4 million. Calvin, this is a ton of money between their top 4 players in Giannis, Middleton, Holiday, and Lopez. I'm not a mathematician here, but this is looking like towards $130 million for those 4 guys next season. That is over the salary cap. That doesn't allow you a lot of flexibility or a lot of room. What does this team need to do? What are the biggest question marks regarding this squad? And what can we expect from them this offseason and next season?
Well, I think Phoenix here in the chat hit the nail on the head with this team. Most teams that we see as championship contenders are kind of in the same boat every offseason, right? Like you have your top 3 or 4 guys locked up. A lot of times you're committing a lot of money to them. So the question is, how do you fill out the rest of the roster? You know, with these veteran guys that have been around, like a PJ Tucker, good 3-point shooters, 2-way players, guys that you can get on the mid-level exception or veteran minimum deals. That's how these teams are built. Their issues going into this offseason, number one, they got to get healthy, right? Like everybody does. They need Middleton back. But like Phoenix said in the chat here, Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton both have player options for next season. Mm-hmm. Bobby Portis was huge for them this year.
He's getting paid.
Career highs in points and rebounds. Career high in minutes played this season. He started 59 games for them when Brook Lopez was out with back surgery. He's probably going to get like 13 or 14 million a year in the offseason.
Yeah.
I don't think Milwaukee has the cap flexibility to pay him that. So I definitely see him opting out. Connaughton is a question mark for me. I think he's a valuable player and probably is valued by a lot of teams in this league, but I don't know if opting out for him earns him as much more money as Bobby Portis is going to get when he opts out.
Yeah.
And the question for Pat Connaughton is, does he want to go somewhere else, or does he want to, is he looking for a bigger role like maybe a DiVincenzo was or something like that, or does he want to come back and keep playing for this team and have another chance to win? So he's a question mark to me as to whether he opts out or not, but that's going to determine how they fill out the rest of this roster, whether or not they can get some of these guys back, and who do they look for to replace them.
Yeah, for me, the biggest offseason need for this team is get healthy and add shooters. I think we saw that in the playoffs this year. Giannis needs shooters around him. A guy like that can get to the basket so easily, that's, as amazing of a player as he is, he needs help, right? And how you help out a great player like that is getting shooters. It just takes the pressure off of him. It opens up the lane for him to get to the basket. And it just makes it so that he doesn't have to work as hard for every single bucket that he gets. And then he has more energy towards the end of the game. So for me, number one goal, Chris Middleton needs to come back. He needs to be healthy. I like Drew Holiday. I like Brook Lopez. I think Bobby Portis, like you said, opts out and gets paid somewhere else. I'm mixed on Pat Connaughton. But this team just needs to figure out a way to add some more shooters. And, they kind of screwed themselves in getting rid of Dante DiVincenzo, in my opinion, because there's not a lot of young up-and-coming guys that this squad really has to help push them. Like everyone talks about, you need veterans, you need older players to win in the NBA. Look at the Lakers this season. They had a bunch of veterans, a bunch of older players, and they just didn't have that spark that youth gives them. We saw that with the Memphis Grizzlies this season, right? It's almost like they're too young to know that they're not this good or they're not good enough. It gives you like just an unlimited amount of confidence. That, I think, is what this team is missing. So I think they need to find a way to bring some more youth to this roster. They need to add shooters, and they just need to get healthy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A couple of good questions in the chat here. Do you want to maybe look up what Milwaukee's draft capital is like for the offseason? I think they have...
I think it's a late pick.
Their pick this year, their first-round pick.
Yeah, pick 24.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good question about Brook Lopez. He is getting older, and he carries a bit of a price tag, but I think he's very valuable for that team. He's still maybe not the rim protector that he was a few years ago, but he still is able to help in that regard. Great outside shooter, spaces the floor really well. I think he plays with Giannis very, very well. So I'd probably give it one more year with him, Yeah,
and I would try and bring back Bobby Portis if there is a way. Progressive G saying Carmichael Dave said he wants the Kings to go after Bobby Portis.
There's going to be a lot of interest for him around the league.
And there's
a lot of interest.
A lot of players the Kings want to go after because when you're not making the playoffs, you got to add talent. Bobby Portis is one of those guys that he played incredibly well. He's going to get a good deal, but it's like, is that play sustainable? Have we seen a new Bobby Portis? Thank you so much for watching. As always, please don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can join us live every single weekday, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, don't forget to tip your bartender.